Most divorces don't start with raised voices, slammed doors, or legal documents. They begin in silence. Long before papers are signed, something shifts beneath the surface of a relationship. Conversations lose depth. Affection becomes routine rather than intentional. Small emotional injuries go unaddressed, not because they don't matter, but because speaking about them feels pointless. From the outside, the marriage appears stable. Inside, an invisible separation has already begun to take shape. Psychologists describe this process as a silent divorce, a gradual emotional disengagement where two people remain legally bound yet psychologically distant. There is no single moment where love disappears. Instead, it erodes through unmet needs, chronic misunderstanding, and repeated emotional withdrawal. Over time, partners stop expecting to be understood. They stop reaching out. What once felt like a shared life slowly becomes parallel existences under the same roof. What makes the silent divorce so dangerous is how easy it is to overlook. There are no clear warning signs, no dramatic crisis that demands immediate attention. Daily routines continue, responsibilities are fulfilled, life goes on. Yet beneath that normalcy, emotional intimacy is quietly replaced by resignation. By the time divorce is openly discussed, the relationship has often been emotionally over for years. And understanding how this happens is the first step to recognizing it, before it becomes irreversible. At the center of every silent divorce lies a question most couples never ask out loud. When did we stop feeling emotionally safe with each other? The breakdown rarely comes from one major betrayal. More often, it grows from repeated moments where one partner feels unheard, dismissed, or emotionally alone. Each time this happens without repair, the brain learns something dangerous. That vulnerability inside the relationship no longer feels worth the risk. From a psychological perspective, emotional connection is maintained through responsiveness. Feeling seen, validated, and emotionally met creates security. When those signals disappear, the nervous system shifts into self-protection mode. People stop sharing their inner world not because they don't care, but because past attempts were met with indifference, defensiveness, or silence. Over time, emotional withholding becomes a survival strategy rather than a conscious decision. This is why silent divorce is not about the absence of love, but the absence of emotional safety. Two people can still care deeply, fulfill roles, and remain committed on paper, while emotionally disengaging to avoid disappointment. The core question is no longer do we love each other, but do I feel emotionally held here? When the answer quietly becomes no, the emotional separation has already begun, even if no one has named it yet. Emotional withdrawal doesn't announce itself. It doesn't arrive with a clear decision or a dramatic turning point. It begins in small, almost reasonable ways. One partner stops explaining how they feel because it takes too much energy. The other listens less closely, assuming they already know the outcome of the conversation. These moments feel harmless on their own, but over time they teach both people the same lesson. It's easier to stay quiet than to stay emotionally engaged. What's happening beneath the surface is a slow reconditioning of the relationship. Each ignored feeling, each unacknowledged concern subtly reshapes expectations. The mind begins to adjust by lowering emotional investment. Instead of hoping for connection, partners focus on practicality, schedules, finances, responsibilities. This shift feels mature and stable, but psychologically, it marks the beginning of detachment. Emotional intimacy is replaced by emotional efficiency, and the relationship loses its sense of emotional aliveness. Over time, withdrawal starts to feel normal. Silence becomes familiar, even comforting. The absence of conflict is mistaken for peace. But what's really happening is emotional avoidance on both sides. Neither person wants to risk being misunderstood again, so they retreat inward. This is the quiet stage where love doesn't disappear. It simply stops being expressed. And without expression, connection slowly fades, unnoticed, until distance feels safer than closeness. At some point in a silent divorce, communication doesn't stop, it changes. Words are still exchanged, but they lose emotional weight. Conversations revolve around logistics rather than inner experiences. Who will pick up the kids? What needs to be paid? What time dinner is? These discussions sound functional, even cooperative. But what's missing is curiosity. No one asks how the other person is really doing, because the answer feels either predictable or emotionally costly. Psychologically, this shift is a form of emotional distancing disguised as maturity. Both partners begin to communicate in ways that minimize vulnerability. They choose neutral topics to avoid tension, believing this keeps the relationship stable. In reality, it creates emotional emptiness. When communication becomes purely transactional, the relationship loses its ability to repair itself. There is no space left to process hurt, disappointment, or unmet needs, only the illusion that things are fine. Over time, this mechanical communication reshapes how partners see each other. They stop being emotional allies and start functioning more like roommates or co-workers. The tone is polite, controlled, and emotionally flat. What once felt intimate now feels distant but familiar. And because nothing is overtly wrong, neither person feels justified in addressing what's missing. The silent divorce deepens, not through conflict but through the absence of emotional exchange. Not all emotional distance begins inside the marriage itself. Many patterns that fuel a silent divorce are learned long before two people ever meet. How someone handles conflict, expresses needs, or responds to emotional discomfort is often shaped by their early environment. If silence was modelled as strength or emotional expression was discouraged, withdrawal can feel natural rather than harmful. In adulthood, these habits quietly resurface, especially under relational stress. Over time, these learned behaviours turn into routines that feel normal. Avoiding difficult conversations feels easier than risking emotional discomfort. Enduring dissatisfaction feels safer than confronting it. Psychologically, the brain prefers familiarity over uncertainty, even when that familiarity is emotionally unfulfilling. So instead of questioning the relationship, partners adapt to it. They lower expectations, redefine closeness, and convince themselves that this is simply what long-term commitment looks like. This is how history and habit quietly lock a relationship into emotional stagnation. Neither partner may feel actively unhappy, but neither feels deeply connected either. The absence of joy is explained away as adulthood, responsibility, or realism. Yet beneath that logic is a deeper truth. Emotional needs are being postponed indefinitely. The silent divorce doesn't progress because of active rejection, but because both people are unknowingly repeating patterns that keep real intimacy out of reach. One of the most isolating aspects of a silent divorce is how invisible it is to the outside world. Friends, family, and even close relatives often see a couple that appears stable and functional. There are no public fights, no dramatic separations, no obvious signs of crisis. Because everything looks normal, emotional distance goes unnoticed. This lack of external validation makes it harder for either partner to trust their own discomfort or acknowledge that something is deeply wrong. Social narratives also play a powerful role in keeping silent divorces alive. Many cultures reward endurance over emotional honesty, praising couples who stay strong regardless of internal disconnection. When someone hints at emotional emptiness, the response is often minimization. Everyone feels that way sometimes. Relationships are supposed to be hard. Love changes. These messages unintentionally teach people to doubt their emotional reality and suppress needs that feel inconvenient or difficult to explain. Over time, this misunderstanding creates a quiet loneliness within the relationship. Partners may feel surrounded by people yet emotionally unseen. Because there is no clear crisis, asking for support feels unjustified, even selfish. The silent divorce deepens in isolation, reinforced by the belief that this distance is normal, temporary, or unworthy of attention. And without recognition, internally or externally, the emotional separation continues to grow, undisturbed and unchallenged. Take Fitri and Rizal, married for 12 years. From the outside, their life seemed ideal. A nice home, stable careers, and active social lives. But inside, things were different. Conversations that once flowed easily had become transactional. Fitri noticed Rizal no longer asked how her day was. He barely shared his own feelings. Over dinners, they talked about schedules, bills, and chores, not dreams, worries, or hopes. Slowly, both had stopped expecting connection, and the silence between them grew like an unspoken contract. The turning point wasn't dramatic. One evening, Fitri realized she'd spent an entire week without sharing a single personal thought with Rizal. The realization hit hard, not because he had done something wrong, but because their emotional worlds had drifted so far apart. They were still together physically, still co-parenting, still going through life side by side, but emotionally they were strangers. This was the essence of the silent divorce. No shouting, no fighting, just quiet disengagement that had taken years to form. To cope, Fitri started seeking connection outside the marriage. Long phone calls with friends, journaling, and solo activities that gave her a sense of being seen. Rizal, meanwhile, focused on work and routines, unconsciously reinforcing the distance. Both were surviving, but neither truly thriving. Their story illustrates a critical psychological truth. Silent divorces aren't always about betrayal or conflict. They often begin with unspoken withdrawal, compounded over time, until emotional intimacy is all but lost. At the heart of the silent divorce lies a psychological phenomenon called emotional disengagement. It's not simply losing love or attraction. It's a gradual shutting down of emotional responsiveness. The brain learns that opening up leads to disappointment, criticism, or misunderstanding. Over time, this protective mechanism, once adaptive, becomes habitual. What begins as self-preservation slowly transforms into a barrier between partners, making emotional intimacy increasingly difficult to access. Coupled with disengagement is the concept of chronic avoidance, where difficult conversations, uncomfortable feelings, or minor conflicts are postponed indefinitely. Each avoided moment strengthens the emotional gap. The relationship becomes a structure maintained more by habit than by ongoing mutual understanding. Partners may still care about each other, but their connection is filtered through routines, efficiency, and practicality rather than empathy or vulnerability. Understanding these psychological patterns helps explain why silent divorces often feel inevitable. They are not the result of a single catastrophic event, but of small, repeated choices, moments of emotional withdrawal, overlooked needs, and unspoken resentments. By the time couples recognize the depth of the disconnect, the emotional distance has been normalized, making the journey back to intimacy feel almost insurmountable. Yet, awareness of these patterns is the first step toward intervention or conscious change. Consider Gunawan and Rihanna, married for 8 years, both highly driven in their careers. Outwardly, they seemed connected, dining out together, celebrating milestones, attending family events. But inside, their emotional worlds had drifted apart. Gunawan often withdrew after stressful workdays, preferring silence over conversation. Rihanna, craving acknowledgement, felt increasingly invisible. She stopped sharing personal thoughts, anticipating that he wouldn't truly listen. Their home, once filled with laughter and shared dreams, had become a quiet space of parallel lives. The tension was subtle yet persistent. Small frustrations accumulated into invisible walls. Rihanna noticed that even minor attempts at emotional intimacy were met with neutral responses or polite nods. Gunawan, unaware of the depth of her feelings, assumed that keeping things peaceful was the best approach. They weren't arguing, they were surviving. But survival came at the cost of emotional connection. Over time, the silence became both a symptom and a cause of growing distance, creating a cycle neither knew how to break. Their turning point came not through confrontation, but through self-reflection. Rihanna began journaling her emotions, realizing the patterns of withdrawal that had silently taken over. Gunawan started attending therapy for stress management, recognizing that his avoidance of emotional engagement had unintended consequences. By identifying the dynamics at play, they could start making conscious choices, choosing moments to reconnect, even in small ways. Their story highlights that silent divorces often thrive not on conflict, but on unexamined habits and unspoken assumptions. One of the hardest challenges in a silent divorce is navigating the social world. Friends, family, and colleagues often assume that the marriage is fine. Casual questions, "How's everything at home?" are answered with polite, surface-level responses. Partners may smile for photographs, host gatherings, or celebrate holidays together, all while feeling emotionally disconnected. The silence inside the relationship is invisible to the outside, leaving couples to cope privately with feelings of isolation. To survive, many individuals develop coping strategies outside the marriage. Some immerse themselves in work or hobbies, others rely on journaling, meditation, or deep conversations with close friends to process their emotions. These outlets serve as substitutes for the intimacy that's missing at home. While they provide temporary relief, they can also reinforce the pattern of withdrawal by creating alternative sources of emotional fulfillment instead of attempting to rebuild connection within the marriage. Psychologically, these coping mechanisms are adaptive. They help maintain stability and reduce stress. Yet they can also make the emotional gap feel permanent. By creating separate emotional worlds, partners unintentionally perpetuate the silent divorce. Awareness of these dynamics is critical. Recognizing the role of coping and social misunderstanding can help couples identify the first opportunities to reconnect, even if only through small, deliberate acts of vulnerability and attention. Repairing a relationship caught in a silent divorce doesn't happen overnight. It begins with awareness, acknowledging that emotional disengagement exists and that both partners contributed, even unintentionally. Small, intentional steps matter more than grand gestures. A simple check-in at the end of the day, sharing one personal thought or asking, "How are you really feeling?" can start rebuilding emotional bridges that have been quietly eroded over years. Couples can also benefit from structured communication techniques. Tools like reflective listening, scheduled emotion check-ins, or guided couples therapy create safe spaces for vulnerability. These strategies help partners recognize and validate each other's experiences without judgment. The goal is not to immediately solve all problems, but to restore the habit of emotional connection, retraining the brain to associate the relationship with safety, attention, and mutual understanding. In addition, focusing on shared experiences and small positive interactions can counterbalance years of disengagement. Cooking together, taking walks, or simply sitting in quiet presence can reconnect partners in non-verbal, emotionally resonant ways. Repair is gradual, but with consistency and mindfulness, couples can begin to shift from emotional distance toward engagement. Even in long-term silent divorces, meaningful reconnection remains possible if both partners commit to awareness and intentional effort. Take the story of Danu and Thalita, married for 10 years. Over time, their home had become a quiet space of coexistence rather than connection. Danu often retreated into work and solo hobbies, while Thalita quietly managed the household, longing for conversation that never came. They weren't fighting, they were surviving. Yet both felt a growing emptiness. The emotional distance was invisible to friends and family, making it harder for either to confront the reality of their silent divorce. Their turning point began in couples therapy. Guided by a therapist, Danu and Thalita started practicing intentional emotional sharing. At first, these moments were awkward. Danu struggled to articulate feelings, and Thalita feared rejection. But by committing to structured check-ins, reflective listening, and small daily rituals of presence, they gradually rebuilt trust and emotional intimacy. Silence was no longer the default. Connection became a conscious choice. Their experience illustrates an essential principle. Silent divorces can be addressed if couples recognize the patterns early and commit to small, consistent interventions. Emotional reconnection isn't about dramatic gestures or perfect timing. It's about creating regular opportunities for vulnerability, empathy, and attentiveness. Even when years of disengagement exist, deliberate effort can restore meaningful intimacy, preventing the emotional separation from solidifying into an irreversible divorce. It's important to acknowledge that not every silent divorce needs to be fixed in the conventional sense. Some couples may find a quiet coexistence preferable to conflict-laden attempts at connection. Psychology teaches us that human relationships are diverse, and fulfillment doesn't always look the same. For some, stability and independence within marriage may provide more emotional satisfaction than forced intimacy or constant engagement. Acceptance doesn't mean giving up. It means recognizing the reality of emotional needs, boundaries, and compatibility. Some individuals flourish in relationships that prioritize personal space and quiet partnership. Others require frequent communication and emotional closeness. Understanding this diversity helps reduce shame and judgment, both internally and socially, allowing couples to approach their relationship with clarity rather than pressure or comparison. By embracing the spectrum of relational experiences, partners can make conscious choices about how they interact. They can redefine connection, establish boundaries, and create a relationship dynamic that respects individuality while nurturing mutual support. Silent divorces, therefore, are not always failures. They can be signals to recalibrate expectations, redefine intimacy, and honor the unique rhythm of each couple's life together. As we reflect on the silent divorce, it becomes clear that this phenomenon is about more than separation. It's about patterns, history, and choices made quietly over time. Emotional distance can creep in unnoticed, shaping lives before anyone signs papers. By understanding the psychological dynamics at play, we gain insight not only into the relationship itself, but also into human behavior, attachment, and the subtle ways we protect ourselves from disappointment. Silent divorces remind us that emotional disengagement doesn't always look like conflict. It can exist under calm surfaces, maintained by habits, avoidance, and social expectations. Recognizing these patterns gives couples a chance to intervene, reflect, or simply understand what's happening without shame. Awareness becomes the first step in either healing the relationship or making conscious choices about its future. Ultimately, the silent divorce is a story of human complexity. It highlights how people adapt to unmet needs, navigate emotional safety, and seek balance in relationships. Whether the marriage is eventually repaired, redefined, or dissolved, understanding the subtle processes that unfold years before legal separation offers clarity, empathy, and perspective, both for those experiencing it and for the observers around them. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever experienced or witnessed a silent divorce where the emotional distance appeared long before any legal steps were taken? Maybe you've noticed subtle shifts in communication, withdrawal, or quiet disengagement in your own relationship. Sharing your experiences helps others recognize these patterns before they become permanent. Take a moment to reflect. How do you communicate, connect, and maintain emotional closeness in your relationships? Are there small habits or patterns you've noticed that either strengthen or weaken intimacy over time? Comment below and join the conversation. Your perspective might help someone else understand their own situation. If this video resonated with you, consider liking, sharing, and subscribing for more psychological insights. Understanding the silent dynamics of relationships empowers us all to approach love, connection, and commitment with awareness and empathy. Sometimes, recognizing the quiet shifts is the first step toward meaningful change.